Good. All right. We're going to call the meeting to order. You'd all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So this is the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting of September 16, 2020. And the next item is actually approval of minutes. However, I will point out we do not have the minutes for September 2, 2020. There was a question that my office had, and we are awaiting the recording clerk to answer. And we also sent a question to Mike Pelton. I believe you were at that meeting, Mike, and I don't know that you had a chance to get back to us on that. If you could just confirm that you were at the September 2nd meeting.
I was.
All right, thank you. And I will let our recording secretary know that so that we can make the minutes available.
Thank you.
With that, I will entertain a motion to approve minutes from August 19, 2020.
So moved.
So moved by Jim Tripp. Is there a second?
I'll second him, Ralph will second
Seconded
him.
by Ralph Zampano. Any changes, errors, or omissions?
I just
If
want to
not-
make, I just want to make one quick comment. And the part about the park, we talked about the town crew doing cleanup at the new park, and it wasn't brush that fell, it was just heavy brush that had been growing. So just to clarify.
Do you want something changed in the minutes, Ralph?
No, I just wanted to note it. It's not critical enough to know. I just wanted to note it.
Any questions on that from anyone? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the August 19th?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? For the record, I need to know what selectmen are present. I do see Jim Tripp. I see Ralph Zampano. I see Rick Shar. I did see Mike Hernandez. Are you present, Mike? Hernandez?
Saw Mike.
And I'm here too, Susan, but not video for some reason.
Okay, Lou Pear is here. Mike Pelton is here.
Here we
What
go.
about Mr. Hernandez? I need to check with our recording clerk. Can you hold on, please?
Yeah, Susan, I had trouble getting on to the meeting. That's why I was a couple minutes late. Something didn't seem to be, I wasn't getting let in. So I tried it a couple of times.
Okay, we did have a meeting in this room using our account, and it ran 2 minutes till 7. That's why you had a little trouble getting on. So we had
Okay.
to then start the town meeting, which was at 7. The second town meeting was at 7:15, and now the Board of Selectmen's meeting is at 7:30. But for recording purposes, I just want to make certain what selectmen are present. And I saw Mike Hernandez. He may be having some difficulty with his,
Susan, can you hear me?
yes.
All right, every time I hit my video, it just says that the host has it disabled.
All right, we need to look into that. If we could just take 1 minute, please, a pause.
Okay?
There you
Yeah.
are. All right, thank you. So we have everyone here tonight. And I need a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second. Mike?
Seconded by Mike Pelton.
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the agenda as presented? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is communications and correspondence. And I did want to talk a little bit about the Connecticut Connectivity Grant. I had sent to you information on this grant. As you know, we received it a couple of years ago, and we've been doing improvements, replacement. We've been replacing sidewalks on Main Street with the grant. And now there's another round. It's called the third round of the connectivity grant. And there is a slight change in their emphasis. They are going to be scoring the grant a little bit differently this next time. And we are looking at perhaps applying again for sidewalks in an area of town that would make transportation more available, and in areas where there's a need for sidewalks. And one area that I would like us to think about, and it's just communications tonight, there's no action on this, would be in the area of Chatham Court. There is no sidewalk that safely lets pedestrians go from Riverview Street up to Route 66 and then to the traffic signal, which is a walk signal that allows people to go across the street to Cumberland Farms. It's also the route that many, particularly our high school and middle school students, take as they travel home, as they walk home from the high school and the middle school down High Street. And then they would cross over just before Daniel's Oil at Freestone Avenue, go along that sidewalk. There's a sidewalk missing in front of Daniel's Oil. I would propose that we put in the grant the completion of that sidewalk that would connect down to the traffic light at Cumberland Farms and Route 66, Marlborough Street, would allow pedestrians to cross and then continue to the left. And I would propose also to the right, which would be going west on 66. If we could, and we don't know how much this would cost, go to Perry Avenue. Those sidewalks would then connect the new Brainerd Place project that is due to start. It would allow safe walking for many children from the schools. Also, there are about 80 plus children that live on Riverview Street in Chatham Court, as well as other houses in that vicinity. And it would certainly allow those individuals that live on that side of Route 66 the opportunity to catch the Middletown Area Transit bus, which rides along Route 66. Right now, people wait in the grass or the dirt in front of the, what I say is where the top dog is, for your reference. And I think it would be much safer and more connectivity for transportation. So I have Bob Shea also on this call, and I wondered if he wanted to make any comments on this. Bob?
Sorry about that. No, this is fairly new, Susan, and I know that we've just started discussions, so we're certainly going to have to, take a look at that and study that with our town engineer to see, what the best avenue is in the course of action related to sidewalks via property and road locations and stuff. So I think it's an important grant process. I think the connectivity grant has shown great progress in town, has really made our areas that our pedestrians are walking much safer, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to continue to do that. And like you had mentioned, to merge some of those areas into our area locations in town that'll better serve those residents.
The other opportunities include the extension of sidewalks on Main Street, as well as there was some discussion about the extension of the Airline Trail, which would go through the YMCA, Butler Construction, and then through where the new Dairy Queen will be. I'll call the Selectmen's attention and our viewers' attention to the scoring for this grant. And the scoring is based on 100 points. 15 points go to identification and documentation. 20 points go to the description and purpose and need for the project. 30 points go for safety and accessibility. 30 points go for transportation equity, which is the area I was talking about formerly, and then 5 points for the cost estimate. You will recall with the connectivity grant, we would need to fund the engineering for this project should we be successful. The connectivity grant only pays for construction. So we'll put it on our next agenda. The grant is due very soon. I believe it's the middle of October, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a short window for this application. I would certainly appreciate your thoughts on this going forward. What I will do is after I talk with our town engineer and some of the issues that have been brought up in terms of the availability and the of those sidewalks and the former suggestion, and let you know about that. For communication, that's all I have right now. I don't know if we had April Graves on. I don't know if she had any information to give to us. I will just ask our recorder if there is anyone. Did you have any report, April?
Hi, everyone. So what the coalition's focus has been in this week and the past couple of weeks has been creating a voter registration drive. And we're doing it in collaboration with the Portland Library, the Democratic Town Committee, and the Republican Town Committee. We're going to be meeting next Wednesday about that to get all the groups on the same page and to pick a date that we'll be doing that in the community. And we've also set up the Portland CT Votes Facebook page that's giving information about voting.
Thank you very much. Do the selectmen have any communications? Lou, did you have anything you wanted to share tonight?
I do.
Thank you.
I received a letter today or a few days ago from Joan Geisman, 332 Middle Haddam Road, Portland, Connecticut. And Joan wrote this letter and she asked me to read it at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I think most everybody has received this as well. Dear Lou, I am writing to you with concerns about the tree canopy in Portland's business district. Several months back, John Hall started a fundraiser for tree replacement in town. Elwood and I contributed to the fund. We have since learned that there have been numerous stumbling blocks to getting these trees planted, with concerns that donations may have to be returned. A lot of money was raised, enough for 15 trees, and preliminary agreements as to placement were reached. Ultimately, only 5 sites have what may still be tentative approval. We are now into the fall planting season, and according to John, the trees he has judged to be suitable are no longer available for this season. This means we are now going to delay planting until next spring. I realize with the pandemic that such things as trees may seem trivial, but I would like to point out that the town still managed to finance and finish a recreation park. I don't think I need to remind anyone that trees offer many amenities to life, especially in more urban settings. Portland has lost much of the beautiful canopy in the past few years, and it is time we address this issue. Thanks for your time, Joan.
Thank you, Lou.
Hey, this is Ralph. I will also acknowledge that I also got pretty much the same letter from Ellen Gild with the same points being made. It's you know, listening to it, I'm sure it's the same thing. So again, still just trying to drive home the thought of pushing along the effort that was being made in order to plant trees in town. The only thing I would, you know, comment on, just with regards to clarify, is that the park project was funded with independent, with contractors doing the work. Assume that this work is going to be done by, this has to be done by the town crew. So there is a kind of a difference there in terms of availability. So I just wanted to note that.
We have had some discussions in regard to the tree planting program. And it was with, I believe, Jim and Lou. And
Right.
I don't know if you want to comment on that. We've made some progress, I think.
Yeah, I'll
Jim?
comment. Specifically, the issue right now is in some of the locations where we really want to try to create the canopy and get that canopy back in place that has been come down due to the trees having to be removed. What we're working on right now is we've got a lot of places where we have existing infrastructure, whether it's with the new sidewalks and the proximity of those trees to the new sidewalks, and the concern being that some of the old sidewalks were damaged by the tree roots. We want to make sure that the new sidewalks are not damaged similarly. So that's one concern. The other concern is taking a look at where our water and sewer infrastructure is located. One of the concerns, for example, is along that west side of Main Street, where we would certainly like to get additional trees in place. There's also a sewer line that is right in that right of way. So there are concerns about that. So we're trying to look at it from that perspective. Some of the progress that's been made, and I'll thank John Hall for doing some research and reaching out, for example, is there are some technologies that are out there that allow, for example, a ring or a barrier to be put in place that will, if you're closer to a sidewalk, prevent the roots from getting down underneath the sidewalk, basically to either direct them deeper into the ground and reduce the chances that the sidewalks can be damaged. So we're looking at things like that and what makes sense of where we can try to find additional locations for the trees. We still have to find a solution for where we've got the additional infrastructure or find other suitable locations where we won't impact that water and sewer infrastructure that's in the ground. So that's probably where the biggest holdup right now is. It's really trying to find locations where for the long term, those trees will not impact the new sidewalks the way the old trees did, and where we won't impact that water and sewer infrastructure, trying to be protective of that.
And I guess I would just ask for a clarification. I'm going to assume that, obviously I'm certainly in favor of us planting the trees. The only thing I'd ask, and is just a verification, is that we don't lose the funding that's been collected and donated. We don't lose, there's nothing tied to a time frame that we lose those funds or have to give them back unless it chose to do that. There's nothing whether there's some deadline to do this, correct? I know
Lou and I actually spoke with John Hall, I want to say late last week, about the issue, and this is when he was talking about some of the technology he was looking at and some of the potential solutions. At that point, there was a concern, quite honestly, that given where we are in the year, there wouldn't be trees really readily available of the type that we would want to plant anyway, and that we'd be looking at a spring planting. That gets into other issues in terms of making sure you can water bag them and protect them and things like that for the summer heat where they're newer trees. It was an email that came out today, a message that came out today, Lou, I think you might have seen it as well, that indicated that there may be a few of the types of trees that we would want to have that are still available now. So there's still a lot of work that's going on there. We still have to work through the issues of making sure that we're getting the trees in the ground in a way that protects the infrastructure going forward, right? That's the best thing for all parties.
Yeah, Jim, I received that note as well from John, and I think it came from an arborist that we have used in town before, who says that there are some trees that are still available for this fall planting. So if we were to move forward, I guess we could maybe plant half of them this fall and then decide where the others could be planted, or if we could plant them all, if we decided that there are viable spots on Main Street with the technology that wouldn't hurt the sidewalks if they were further enough away from the infrastructure of sewer and water. That's a question I would have to ask Bob Shea. Obviously, we'd have to look at a map and to see where all those things are, and then can they be planted this fall? As far as the funding goes, the funding part of it's a matching fund, Ralph, and that matching fund comes from the Jonas Center. And so half of the money were donations from people from town, and the matching grant was from the Jonas Center. So the thought was that at least the understanding was the Jonas Center expected these trees to be planted, and in good faith, they said they would be planted for the people who put the money forward for the trees. And so he's saying that we can't hold this money up forever. So there is maybe no timeline per se, but there is a hidden timeline or a time frame where the Jonas Center wants to make sure that this can work. I'd have to ask John Hall if there really is a deadline, and the Jonas Center has its funds and money ready just for this year. But obviously, if we can plant the trees this fall, that would be great.
Yeah, and this is Susan. I want to take a moment just to say thank you to the Jonas Center for assisting. This is, as I understand it, a sustainable CT initiative where they provide up to 50% if the money can be raised for the other 50%. And I believe the Jonas Center was successful in getting individuals from Portland to commit, and that's matched by Sustainable CT. And I believe the same program is also happening in Middletown. So it's certainly to our advantage to work as efficiently and appropriately as we can. You know, we have spent, and we will have spent soon, about $1.2 million on sidewalks. $1 million coming from bonds that we issued in 2016, or we were authorized to issue in 2016, and then over 200,000 that we recently got from the connectivity grant that is going on Main Street. So, of course, we are very careful about how the trees will be placed. I think it's very encouraging that we're working together on this, and I would hope that our sidewalk committee could extend their abilities to look at this and make some recommendations to us in concert with the Jonas Center and Public Works. I know Bob Shea has identified some areas that we can definitely put the trees, and then other areas, as Jim pointed out, that have difficulty, not just because of sidewalk destruction potential, but also because of underground utilities, specifically sewers. So that is something that takes a fair amount of work, and I believe we're up for it, and we should be able to indicate whether some of those can be planted this fall and the remaining in the future. Is there any other communication tonight? I have one more thing, if you would. For your information, and I shared this, and it's on public media as well, on, let's see, Saturday, this coming Saturday, September 19, from about noon to 2 p.m., there is a rally that is being held by an organizer out of Amston, Connecticut. His name is Jim Cosenza. And it is a Back the Blue rally. The event is a peaceful march to make people aware that police are not the enemy, to thank officers for everything they do, and for helping keep us safe. There will be a start at about 11:30 where people can park in front of the Brownstone Intermediate School at 314 Main Street, and then they'll proceed down to, by walking, down to the intersection of Route 17A and 66, not too far from where the Portland restaurant used to be. So if anyone is interested in participating, they certainly can. I just want to say a special thank you to all our public safety personnel, our police, our fire, emergency management personnel. They do quite a bit, and I know personally how much I appreciate the work that they do. I plan on attending, as well as I think members of our police department. I know Captain Millardo, as well as Sergeant Kelly and others. And in addition, our state representative, Christy Carpino, is going to look at her schedule and make all accommodations possible for her to attend. So, thank you. Yeah, we'll go on. That's communications and correspondence. The next item will be public comment. But I just want to make certain that there's nobody else under communications and correspondence for the selectmen. Okay, so the next item is number 6. It's public comment. Okay. David Murphy.
Yeah, good evening. I just want to remind everyone on the call that tomorrow night there's a public hearing, planning and zoning for the Gospel Lane construction of a 2.1 acre salt storage shed area. I don't know if anyone is concerned like I'm concerned. Just to put it in perspective, the Hartford Civic Center is 69,000 square feet. What they're proposing is a 91,000 square foot facility, which is 25% larger than the Hartford Civic Center, that's going to go in right down the street from where the Dairy Queen is and everything else. And they're going to hold 150,000 tons of salt, and they're going to have 20 plus or minus trucks a day going in and out of there. So I don't know if anyone else has any concerns, but I know I do.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Other public comment? Kitch Cernicki?
Good evening. Oh, unmute. Okay. Good evening. We have a conference here of whether or not we were muted. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I was not here for the public meetings because I was still at work at Ingersoll, but I'm glad to see the results of those meetings. I had some questions. It seems to me that it's been a long time, for as long as I've lived here in Portland, that the charter, the town charter, hasn't been reviewed or revised or amended in any way. And Susan, do you know if there is a state regulation as to when charters need to be looked at?
I know charters are supposed to be reviewed every 10 years, and we have not done that, Kitch. I do know that. I have, as the selectmen know, we have had that on our agenda for at least a year or two to see if there was any interest in forming a commission, and the selectmen have not indicated an interest in that review, a formal review. They have looked at the charter, but there's been no recommendations to formulate a full committee. And if you look at our agenda, you'll see at the bottom, it is a follow-up item that has been on there all along.
Okay, so I was under the impression that that charters during that time had to, within that 5 or 10 year period or whatever your own charter says, has to be looked at by people other than people who have been elected to public positions.
Okay.
I may not be correct on that, but I thought that that was part of what had to happen. So I thank you for the information you sent me from COST yesterday about public meetings. It's good to know that tonight a comment was allowed. It's hard for me, and I'm hoping for others as well, to have at one point been involved in government and to see that right now we're in a place where we will be just about a full year where the public is pretty much excluded from what happens. I think here in Portland, you've done a great job, and insofar as making sure that every meeting's up, every essential meeting in town is available to be seen and heard on Zoom. But it's difficult to think that, and this is not a slam at anybody, to think that 7 people are making a decision, or in those places where there are 9 members of an elected board, 9 people are making decisions for everybody. I have no fault with anything that's happened so far. It just feels like we're left out of process. Then the other questions I had have to do with the structure at 422 Main Street here in Portland. As to the status of what that building actually is. I know it's advertised on Facebook as a sober home or a place for women to live. In the last 5 weeks, there have been 2 significant incidents at that house. One of them was an emergency response that required approximately five different vehicles to respond to an emergency there. A person was removed from that house, medically removed from that house on a stretcher in the upright position. And there was a long-term ambulance available and/or police vehicle for more than an hour's worth of time. I don't need to know what happened to the person. What I'm concerned about is why something happened to the person, because there are a public list of rules and regulations about living in that house, some of which are concerned with code of conduct, medicines that any member may have, supervision, paying your rent on time, etc. I'm concerned that maybe that supervision is lacking, or there's none at all, or it's part-time supervision. There has been wording about an overseeing pastor. I was wondering if that existed. It's scary to live within walking distance of a home where something goes on, because shortly following that event, within 3 weeks' time, there was an event that appeared to be or seems to be an alleged mugging on Main Street, at 422 Main Street. I don't know if the person who is alleging that she was mugged was followed, or if she had a relationship with the alleged mugger prior to, but supposedly, at least reported by the mortgage holder for that home, was that somebody was waiting for a person who lived there, and then a mugging occurred. So that happened after dark. People walk Main Street daytime, nighttime, early morning. I'm feeling insecure in my neighborhood now. I think we need to look at what goes on there. Is it a sober house? Is it a boarding house? Is it a rooming house? People pay rent to live there. And how many people live there? Because I thought we had in place some guidelines for how many people can live in a house, how many unrelated people can live in a house. And I just need to know if those things are being followed, because I feel uncomfortable in my own neighborhood now. And I think if any of you lived in a neighborhood where these kinds of things were happening, and now on a regular basis, and there are things that have happened in the past that you may all know of or not know of, I think that you would be uncomfortable too. And although we spend a lot of time making sure our town looks good and that we have opportunities to enjoy the things that people expect to have in every town, a good education, a good park and recreation system, opportunities for all ages, to live in a neighborhood where you no longer feel secure is very discomforting. And so I don't know what can be done about it. And then finally, I'm going to talk about something that occurred this morning when I left my house to go to work. I left my house at approximately 9:20. I pulled out of my driveway and there was a car headed northbound on Main Street. That was probably close to where I used to live at 513. As a matter of fact, I could see that car. I comfortably pulled out of my driveway because I live in an area where the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. Approaching an area where the speed limit drops to 30 miles an hour, and then approaching the school area where the speed limit, whether school's in session or not, is 25 miles an hour. I had a woman driving a gray sedan behind me who plastered her horn from my house to Brownstone School, Brownstone Intermediate School. She then rolled down her window, or pushed her button and held her window down, and screamed obscenities to me and told me to go fricking faster, only she didn't use fricking. It went on for that length of time. Ed, who stands on my front porch every morning to make sure I get out and go on, got in the car to follow me because he was so afraid that this woman was going to drive me off the road. Something needs to be done about the speed on Main Street. I have spoken to this body. I have listened to people speak when I sat where you sit now about how unsafe the speed limit is on Main Street in Portland. From the bridge, I'm going to say it again, from the bridge to the Walgreens, the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. At that point, it drops to 30. When you hit the school zone, it drops to 25. You come out of the school zone, and at Trinity Church, it's back to 30 again. At the white church, it goes back up to 35, and it remains at 35 until you get to the school district for Gildersleeve, where it drops to 25 again and stays 25 for a while, and then it goes to 35. The speed limit on Main Street is not 50 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour, or 60 miles an hour. Something needs to be done. People are at risk. And again, I'm going to talk to you about how many people walk on Main Street and how risky it is to be there, whether it's a mugger or whether it's a speeder. Something needs to be done. This is a quality of life issue, and I am imploring all of you to please do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kitch. We have Mr. John Hall.
Mr. John Hall, you are next under public comment.
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed listening to the conversation about the trees, and I just wanted to speak up with some, maybe a little bit of clarification exactly, how the Jonas Center and I view the situation in terms of the funds we've gathered and the commitments we've made. As long as we are moving forward to identify these sites, and there's a prospect of doing that, in general, I don't think we have to worry about any return of funds, including the matching funds, which, by the way, did come from Sustainable CT. The Jonas Center received donations, or actually a website received these donations, and then they were matched by Sustainable CT, and that money is with the Jonas Center right now. And as long as we are moving forward to plant the trees in a reasonable period of time, I think that we don't have to worry about returning that money with some conditions or provisions. One is we advertise this campaign to be trees that would provide a public benefit, that would be located near the town center between East Main and Main inclusive, including where new sidewalks had been installed, as this is the highest foot traffic, and many trees have been removed or have died in that area. So this is where we were telling our prospective donors that we wanted to plant trees, and where the town of Portland had agreed that we would plant trees. So we made a commitment to our donors to plant in that area. We can't, without getting some permission, I don't feel it would be responsible for the Jonas Center or good for our reputation to plant those trees elsewhere. Although we could go still on Main Street, farther north on Main Street. One exception to that is, or a couple of exceptions, is that when people were expecting these trees to be planted in the area I just mentioned, some people gave considerable donations for trees in specific locations, which of course we couldn't promise that, but we said, that's our identified area. We should be able to plant there. It's areas where trees were recently taken down. And if we cannot plant in those particular sites, we would have to return some money, or at least offer that money to be returned, to return it. And if we return money to a donor, we would have to return it to Sustainable CT too. So there's over $1,000, which is at risk in that sense. But I'm hopeful we'll be able to spend all this money in Portland in the area where we had identified. So I'm very hopeful of that. As far as the tree availability, it is true that some of the larger trees we wanted to plant are no longer available at the Pride's Corner Nursery in Cromwell, but there are smaller trees of the same species that are available there now, and there is a prospect of getting some of these larger bald and burlap trees from Lebanon. I was either misunderstanding what Jane Harris had said, or the situation at Pride's Corner changed since Jane Harris told me that. So I'm very pleased to confirm that we do seem to be able to get trees to plant if we're able to plant them. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm hopeful we can work through all the issues with the infrastructure and identifying where that infrastructure is and using the root barrier materials so we can get these trees planted. I know there's a lot of enthusiasm in the town for doing this, and we have lost so many trees that it's going to take these trees a long time to grow up. So I hope we can get started with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Any further comment?
I have a question about that. So again, it kind of relates to the comment I made earlier with regard to, I mean, the donations that were made, John, those were all towards paying for the actual purchase of the trees, right? So any work that has to do with putting the trees in is going to really be on the town, right?
No, we agreed to plant. We agreed to pay the cost of planting the trees. Bob Shea had told me that the town would be able to dig the holes and would be able to water the trees. But as far as actually planting the trees, mulching the trees, installing the water bags, and we have some money available to prune the trees when they need it early in their life, we will do all that. But whatever the town can provide by way of services, namely digging the holes and watering, that's going to make our tree money go further. And if we have the issue of installing the root barrier material, the Jonas Center will buy that as well. And if the town can provide equipment or services to dig the trench to put the root barrier in, again, that will help our money go further. The Jonas Center does not have equipment to do that. Jim Landry is our planter. I don't know if he has a trencher to dig that trench, or he can rent it. But if the town has it and is able to do that, that would be great. And that'll allow our tree money to go further.
Thanks. That's what I just want to clarify. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I have a question, Susan, for John
Yes, go ahead.
around the trees. And I'm in favor of it. And I actually participated in his fundraiser. Question is, how late in the season can we plant? And then if it comes down to, if fall planting is better than spring because of less watering demands, maybe, you know, we plant what we can this fall and then we stage things planned to do it again next fall. I would hate to see us pushed and plant a bunch of trees either now that don't survive the winter if we wait too long, or we plant them in the spring and then we have another very hot summer and we end up losing them because we just, you know, they're not, they haven't taken hold before the summer heat sets in.
Okay, I did a little research on that recently too. And from what I've learned is there's no danger of planting too late. You can plant in November. The tree is just as good in the ground in November, even though it's not growing roots as it would if you planted in September. But you can still plant in November. It's just that the tree is as good in the ground there as it would be in the nursery, balled and burlap. So as long as the ground isn't frozen, you know, we can plant into November. So we do have time in that regard. There was some other part to your question though that
about watering, John.
Oh,
just
watering. Now we're happy to plant half the trees now and half the trees in a year. My concern here is for the town, because if the town is going to water these trees, and here Bob Shea can perhaps fill us in. I was thinking that the town, you know, to put this water tank on the truck and water these trees, it would be most efficient to water 15 trees in one season rather than have to go through this twice and do 5 or 6 trees now and 9 or 10 trees in a year. So from a watering standpoint and the town's efficiency of your work crew and everything, it seems to me it would be better from the town's perspective to water all the trees at once in one season or in one planting. Then you don't have to put the water tank on twice. if we plant in the fall, we're still going to have to do some watering, probably in the summer anyway, especially if we're planting late. So this all has to be worked out, but you know, we really need to know what the town is able to do if we're dividing the plantings up into 2 sections, which is fine from our standpoint. We'd rather get some trees in the plant in the ground this season. But again, we are relying on the cooperation of the town and Public Works to make this all work. There's a lot of pieces, and so it all needs to be discussed and planned.
If I could talk a little bit about getting into the weeds here. I'll take the opportunity. John has done a wonderful job identifying. Well, first of all, the fundraising was amazing. I think he doubled his initial goal. And thanks to the public for supporting this, and I do think it's a great project. We've run into some hurdles, and it's just a few, and it is our infrastructure and our sidewalks and our location. We have to remember also that we don't own the land that we want to plan on Main Street. It's going to require a state encroachment permit, and I've been having very difficult times moving those ahead with the state. It's taken at times up to 3 months to get approval for that. I think something like this might move along a lot quicker, but we're in September. As far as manpower to plant, when we first talked about this early in the spring, things are a little different here, not only with COVID, but with our latest storm. Our highway department is beyond taxed with work that they need to get done by the end of the year. We do have our grounds crew, which is just as busy. Next year, they will even be busier with much more work, I'm sure, at our field. So we will do, and we've promised to always help the groups the best we can. Watering will have to be worked out. We do that now, probably not as often as the new trees will be needed, but we'll certainly try to schedule that. If we can get some trees in this fall, it's going to be difficult, and I will be honest, it's going to be difficult to be able to do that with the crews that I have available based on what still needs to be done. We still need to pick up probably 3 to 4 weeks worth of brush. We are working extra hours to do that, working extra hours to finish our roads that we had such a late start on. We still have an awful lot of tree work to do related to damaged trees that were damaged by the storm. So we're a little taxed on time, but we certainly will work and continue to work to try to get what we can done. I just can't make any promises that we'll be able to even, I hope we could dig holes, but we can go, even further. The biggest thing for Main Street, though, is in the areas that fall into state property, which is anywhere on the other side of the sidewalk, and our infrastructure's there. Our main sewer line runs down alongside. We've had that damaged many times by trees, but there's areas that we certainly can try to focus on that may be far enough away as the infrastructure changes. We have not only sewer there, but we have water infrastructure as far as lateral service lines that go to all our properties on Main Street that work through that area. And there's also DOT drainage that runs in that area. That's a very busy right away for the state as far as utilities, and it changes as you work your way down Main Street. So we're trying to identify those areas that will work the best. So we're committed to help. I just don't, it's difficult. We're in a difficult time now, but we certainly will work with everyone. And I think everybody agrees that it's a great cause to bring some new trees back that certainly can thrive for as many years, hopefully, as some of the other ones did on Main Street. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of those, and we're continuing to lose them to disease, and that happens with age. So, I mean, that's what I have. As always, we'll try to do our best, but I do want to put out there that this is going to be a very difficult fall for us to get things finished and get ready for the winter months. We have a big project that we're trying to finalize with our salt shed, and which requires us to bring all our product back that we had to move and to, certainly prepare for new. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we have limited staff, and we're doing our very best to try to accomplish everything. And we certainly will be there to discuss what we can do to help.
Thank you very much. more to come on that as far as the sidewalk committee, as well as Public Works in my office and the Jonah Center will all work together and based on our resources, proceed. This has been very good discussion. Thank you, everybody. The next item under old business, if there's no more public comment, Leila? No, thank you. Under racial equity, diversion, and inclusion, just one thing I wanted to mention, and that is we had a very good response from our community for individuals who want to serve on the task force to do some effective projects between now and June 3rd, 2021, and working with our police, our Board of Education, and our youth services and our youth. And with that, I would like the selectmen to consider one request, and that would be to change the number of regular members from 5 to 7 and keep the number of alternates at 2 on that task force. But in order to do that, I would need a motion from the board to allow that slight amendment to the stipulations that we put in the resolution the last time we met. Is there any interest in that?
You know what, to get it started, I think it's given the level of interest as we've been.
Can't hear you, Jim.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No.
Try it now.
Oh, we could,
All right, now can you hear me?
yeah, that's better.
All right.
I got right into the microphone, Jim?
Yeah, I think I got shut off.
I could hear you a little bit, but it was very faint.
Okay.
Okay. No, I actually agree. Given we've definitely had a lot of interest as we've been basically collecting the names and the volunteers, the number of volunteers, it's worked out well. To start the ball rolling, I'll make a motion that we amend the previous resolution to establish the task force on solidarity to increase the number from a total of 7, 5 regular and 2 alternates, to 9, which would be 7 regular and 2 alternates.
Is there a second to that?
This
I'll
is
second
Ralph.
that.
Oh,
Oh, no, go ahead, Ralph.
Michael Pelton, is that you?
we'll let Mike Pelton's going to go with the second.
All right.
Okay. So Michael Pelton seconded. Now we'll go to discussion. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. That's all I had under that item. So we can move into Reentry Committee, discussion of services and programs offered during COVID-19. I wanted to point out that the Boy Scouts in Portland came forward with what I thought was a very good recommendation for how they will conduct their meetings at the Firehouse number 2. And in reviewing it, I agree with them. It's a proposal for indoor-outdoor use, and they're limiting it as much as possible, but they certainly want to make sure that the scouts remain active. So they're suggesting that they limit the normal weekly troop meetings to 2 in-person meetings for September and October each. Limit meetings to just the scouts, a maximum of 12 youth. Limited number of adult leaders, a maximum of 6. As the National Boy Scouts of America currently allow a maximum of 25 people indoors at meetings, which the state of Connecticut is in concert with. Conduct as much of the meeting outdoors as possible, and depending on the activities, have a portion of the youth indoors and a portion of the youth outdoors to maintain the socially distance. Anyone attending the meetings would be required to use hand sanitizer upon entering and exiting the building, and they have it available periodically during the meeting. Masks are to be worn by all attendees at all times. No food will be served. No physical contact between the scouts will occur. Activities are structured to keep scouts and leaders 6 feet apart. The Portland Volunteer Fire Department member and Assistant Scoutmaster Al Prince will drive the apparatus outdoors to the front of the firehouse to provide additional room to keep the youngsters separate when possible. Normal end of meeting announcements for parents will not occur The announcements will be sent out electronically, so the parents do not need to enter the building or exit their car when picking up their youngsters. The group will have a designated COVID adult at each meeting, and it will be this adult's responsibility to ensure that all of the COVID procedures are being followed. The troop will monitor and follow all National Boy Scouts and Connecticut Rivers Council's COVID meeting policies. And in the event that anything changes in regard to COVID-19, the Boy Scouts will certainly pivot to virtual meetings as needed. This was signed by Michael Tierney, the Scoutmaster, and I must commend him on his work. I think he did a fine job. And I open it up to see if there's any comments or a motion to approve, because this is use within our building of the Firehouse Company too.
This is Ralph. I thought it sounds like they've done a pretty good job along with some of the other groups in town in terms of trying to do their best to deal with the situation that we're in the middle of. So I certainly would make a motion for the Boy Scouts to proceed with their regular meetings per the the procedures that they have identified.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Shar.
I remember when Michael Tierney was a Tiger Cub.
I do too.
Yeah.
Are there any further comments? If there are none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Tierney. Good job. I also wanted to point out in terms of Town Hall at 33 East Main Street. We talked about this already, and we have set up a reception desk in the hallway or the vestibule of the ground floor by the town clerk's office. And of course, we did this because the weather is changing. What we have there is a table for laying out paperwork, a telephone with phone extensions to contact the department heads as the walk-in customer is at the town hall to do business. Pens that they use are actually taken and put into a to-be-cleaned mug. We do have gloves, tissues, disinfectant for wiping down the table after business is conducted. Customers, upon entering, are instructed to please use the hand sanitizer, and they write their name down on the contact log tracing sheet. And we also have a calendar that our town tech department has developed that staff are using. So I want to thank and compliment our staff. They have been going down and sitting at the reception desk an hour at a time. We've been able to fill all of the various shifts, and it allows each resident and customer who comes in to access the town hall in a safe COVID-19 environment. We do have an area in what used to be the probate judge's office that we have set up as a nice conference room where 6 feet distance is allowed, as well as appointments are made by individuals who wish to do more than simply have or drop off forms or information that they may need. I think it's working well. The one thing I will point out that we have not gone forward with, because we had some difficulty, is the temperature taking at the beginning of the person's admittance to the town hall. And since they are not going to be there for very long, we're kind of putting that on hold right now. And of course, as was stated earlier, if there are changes to the infection rate, all of this would change in concert with the recommendations of the State Health Department. So if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. If not, we'll move on to the STEEP grant application. And there was a town meeting held previous to this meeting this evening. There were no public comments given during that town meeting. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution that was discussed at the town meeting. Many of you were there. And I don't know if there's an interest in reading it, but certainly we can if there is. And I'll turn it over to Jim, who I know was at the town meeting.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the special town meeting, the resolution from the special town meeting that was discussed. It's basically dated September 16, 2020, entitled 2020 State of Connecticut Small Town Economic Assistance Program Steep Grant. I don't know if we really do we want to read the whole thing, or
The reading can be waived if that if there's a second to it, Jim?
Yeah, and I guess I would further move that we waive the reading, with the exception, I guess, that I would just note, because I think this is probably important, is that the authorization would be to accept on behalf of the town of Portland, would be for the first selectwoman, Susan S. Bransfield, to be authorized to accept on behalf of the town of Portland a 2020 Connecticut steep grant in the amount of $128,205 for the Brownstone Avenue water main replacement with a local town match of $293,655 in Portland's capital improvement funds.
Is there a second to that motion in the waiving of the reading?
I'll second that.
By Rick Shar. I will point out, we don't know yet if the grant has been awarded to us. I had hoped we might have heard by now. We have not. But in anticipation of getting that grant, we'll hopefully have the approval to proceed. Any discussion on this grant application and the amount that we're putting in for the town share?
I think the only thing I would add is just that the town match would be coming from existing funds. I'm looking for a specific paragraph, but basically from the capital non-recurring funds that are already in place. So it's not additional monies that we have to locate.
Thank you for that clarification, Jim. If there's no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the Federal Emergency Management Act grant, which is for the breathing apparatus for the fire department. And that too was at a special town meeting tonight. There was no public comment or discussion. So this too, I'll send over to Jim because he was our moderator at that meeting. Jim?
Yep, again, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution titled FEMA Firefighter Grant Breathing Apparatus dated September 16, 2020. I would also ask that we waive the full reading, but again, want to note that what it would authorize would be for the first selectwoman to approve the grant, basically to approve accepting the grant, which was awarded in the amount of $219,000, in the amount of $219,156. The federal share of that grant is $208,720, which also requires a town match of $10,436, which is 5%. That money is set aside in Fund 8 Capital Non-Recurring Fire Department.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Ralph.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Ralph Zampano seconded. I'll open it up for discussion.
Just a really good opportunity to get the breathing apparatus. The breathing apparatus we have is hitting that end of life. It's critical that we get this. And it's really a good opportunity, and kudos for being able to get this grant to really fund the lion's share of it.
Thank you. Anything from Chief Shea?
No, I just thank you for that. It's almost 2 wins for me in 2 different positions, so I'm happy to see that. I hope for the steep grant, that'll be a huge improvement for the town, and the protective equipment for your volunteer firefighters is key, and we were lucky enough to win that grant this year. We put a lot of work into that. It's a very competitive grant, as we've stated before, throughout the nation. It's not just a Connecticut thing. They get thousands of applications for many needs. So we're very happy that we're able to do that. We are working hard already, trying to find our avenue and how we're going to make this happen, and it looks very promising. So I think it's just a great thing. So thanks for the support, and we'll continue to do our best to serve the community.
And congratulations on the award to our fire department and Chief Shea, along with your grant writers. Thank you very much. So with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is appointments to boards and commissions, and I know Jim Tripp has some appointments tonight for us. Jim?
Yes. The first set of appointments would go for the Solidarity Task Force, which is now going to be to list 7 names, and 7 names as regular members with 2 names as alternates. Appreciate everybody who has volunteered to do this, and all the folks that submitted names to basically come up with what should be, I think, an effective committee. I make a motion that we nominate the following to the Solidarity Task Force. First name is Rasheem Riley, Barry Rogers, April Graves, Glenn Eason, James Modis, John Twitchell, and Erin Livensparger. Those 7 would be the regular members. And as alternates, Noel Garrett and Shelley Nolan.
Is there a second to those nominations?
I'll second it. Mike
Seconded
Hernandez.
by Mike Hernandez. Thank you, Mike. Any discussion or additional names? If not, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the nominations? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And I'll point out that those individuals who indicated interest and those who maybe didn't have a chance to contact my office if you haven't. If you did and you were not selected for tonight, you're on a waiting list. And as positions may become available on that task force, you would be certainly considered for appointment. But again, thank you to everyone who put their name forward. I think it's very beneficial to see so much interest. Jim, did you have any other?
Yes, I have a few more. First, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Victoria Short to the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second it, Ralph.
Made by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
I would make a motion that we appoint Amanda Herzog to the Parks and Recreation Commission as an alternate.
It's an alternate. Is there a second?
This is Ralph. I'll second her as well.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Are there any other nominations or appointments tonight?
One more.
One more.
I have one more.
Yep.
I make a motion that we appoint Mitch Foreman to the Veterans Affairs Committee as an alternate.
Is there a second to Mitch Foreman as an alternate?
I'll second it.
Thank you,
Rick.
Rick. Rick Shar. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Any other appointments to boards or commissions?
That's it.
Thank you, everybody. The next item under new business was shared with the selectmen for the review previous to tonight's meeting. 2020 fixed assessment application for the Cody driving range at 1401 Main Street. And I'll open it up for discussion and motion for approval.
Susan, is this for 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll read the application, Rick. It is a fixed assessment at 50% of the increased assessment for a 3-year period. The proposal, as many of you know, is a commercial building of 3,360 square feet, which is constructed on the site. The building houses 5 golf hitting bays for golf lessons and custom club fitting. Each bay has a garage door which opens out into the range area. The tenants of the building will be Chris Cody's Golf Shop LLC and Northeast Golf Performance. The scope of the project and plans are filed with the town of Portland. The cost of the building construction is budgeted at $432,000. Construction began in February 2020 and was completed this past summer. And the opening has occurred. They've done a fine job in the building, and our assessor has determined that based on the assessment, and it's been shared with the Codys, specifically Donna Cody, who is the treasurer, that the fixed assessment calculation would be a total of, let's see, land, $111,440. The improvements made were $211,890 for a total of $323,330. The improvement is, as I stated, $211,890. If 50% of that is taken, $105,945 would be calculated along with the land. So the total fixed assessment calculation becomes not the $323,330, but rather the $217,390. And per Connecticut General Statute, Section 12-65B, subsection C, the applicant meets the requirements for a fixed assessment of $217,390 for 3 years, starting with the 2020 grand list. And it goes further that the cost of improvements, if the cost of improvements is not less than $25,000 and is up to $499,999, then the assessment or increase in the assessment, which is what we're looking at, may be fixed at 50% of the increased assessment for a period not greater than 3 years. And it looks like with the calculations based on the mill rate of 34.38, the taxes without a fixed assessment would be approximately $11,120. With the fixed assessment incentive, should you approve it tonight, the taxes would be $7,470, which is a savings, depending on the mill rate, of approximately $3,650 per year. This program, as you're aware, is an incentive for economic development within our town. And having met all of the stipulations and the review by our town assessor, Mr. Richard Lasky, I'm recommending that this be approved tonight because all of the stipulations under the law as well as under our town policy have been met by the Codys.
Susan, I would, this is Ralph, I would also support this. You know, Chris Cody has done a wonderful job in town, starting from a business in his basement to having 2 full-blown facilities that are bringing people into town and continue to grow. I would assume that he will probably use any savings to probably build on to his business. I don't think he doesn't see stopping. He continues to grow and continue to add. So I would think that is what he would do with these type of savings. So I certainly commend them for the great effort that they've done in town and continue to do in terms of being a great business.
Is there a motion to approve the fixed assessment?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Ralph. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Rick Shar. Open it up for some discussion. There being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposition or abstentions? There being none, motion carries. Thank you. The next item under new business is an 824 referral for planning and zoning for the proposed land swap with the Exchange Club of Portland, map 75, lots 27 and 28. I will be recusing myself because I'm a member of the Portland Exchange Club, as is Rick Shar and Ralph Zampano. So I'm turning the meeting over for this item only to Mr. Lupair, and I will leave the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Just to review everybody on where we are with this is that we've talked about this land swap for a while, and it looks like we have all the ducks in line that things could move forward this fall. So in doing so, I'd like to make a motion to refer the Town of Portland, Portland Exchange Club land swap to the Planning and Zoning Commission in accordance with the 824 state statute. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mike Pelton will.
Okay, Mike, and maybe while you're there, is there someone taking notes? I think there is, usually is. Jim, do you know if anybody's taking minutes?
Susie's writing some notes, but I don't believe anybody's.
Well, we have it on tape anyway. So with that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. I'd like to also make a motion to set the town public hearing for Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 at 7 o'clock via Zoom.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on that second? If there is none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I have, how many ayes do I have?
I think you had.
Myself?
I have all, okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. I will turn this meeting back over to Susan.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Lou.
Right.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. So the next item is refunds of excess payments. We'll have Jim Tripp read those.
Yep. All right, I make a motion that we refund the amount of $35.99 to Thomas DeBella.
Second it.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $71.14 to Cab East LLC.
Is there a
Second.
second? Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $32.52 to Craig D. Wesky.
Second it.
Second by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $137.35 to Lucas M. Zubra.
Is there a second? Ralph seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $62.57 to Monica J. Zubra.
Second it.
Second by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $47.55 to Zabinyo Zubra.
Second it.
Second by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $38.67 to Kenneth W. Block.
Second it.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we refund the amount of $452.20 to VW Credit Leasing Ltd.
All in, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Motion carries.
And I make a motion that we refund the amount of $76.60 to Honda Lease Trust.
Second it.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Status and committee reports?
I could probably just add a couple quick things with regards to Park and Rec, just to point them out. They are doing a community bike ride in conjunction with Complete Streets on September 26th. I think might be starting at 12:30, but you probably could look for additional information online. But that's a emphasis of just the Complete Streets goals and to make use of the airline trail and get more people onto it. So it should be, hopefully it'll be a good event. We won't have, we'll have good weather and people will come out. And the other event that Park and Rec has been talking about is about the October, our usual 5K run in October. It would be on Halloween, on the morning of Halloween on 10/31. They're still in the midst of talking about whether the run would be a regular run as you would normally proceed with the run, or it would be a virtual run, or if it would be some sort of a combination of the two. I think they're going to make a decision in the next couple weeks. But for now, and there are all of those three types of races that are going on right now. So there is no one way that towns are doing their runs. So they'll be making that decision very soon about how they want to proceed. And I think those are the two things I wanted to point out.
Okay, any other committees?
I could
Jim?
basically just note that the Board of Selectmen Sidewalk Ordinance Committee did meet basically and discussed a few issues, including really taking a look at what we have for remaining funds associated with the bonded work. There's been a lot of hard work that's been done by our Public Works Department, and we have some additional funding and can target some additional sidewalks. What we're right now is what we're looking at is to evaluate, based on those available funds, a few different potential targets. We're trying to get sort of a rough order of magnitude internally of what different options would cost. Because one of the things we have to do to go out to bid is do some pre-engineering work. And we want to be kind of very prudent with how we spend money doing the pre-engineering for bid, to go out to bid, to maximize the amount of money we have to accomplish work. So we're working on that now, and we're going to be getting together again in relatively short order to try to keep that moving forward. We are going to try, and we did talk at the meeting about basically taking a look and taking another walk, taking a look at some of the sidewalks in East Main, Fairview, and obviously Waverly Extension. We have extension. So, and the only other note is Board of Education met last night, and just in that little bit of normalcy. One of the things they had approved 2 weeks ago was to allow some of the student athletes to start working, basically doing the strength and conditioning, but they had not all basically voted to allow them to do competition. This is with respect to cross country and soccer. They did vote last night that they would allow that to proceed. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of caution there.
So they're allowing them to compete with other towns. So will they leave the town?
That's, I think, to be determined, but they're going to allow a competition to occur, whether or not and what the nature of how it looks, whether or not, for example, it's going to be one other town or one other community. I think there's still some of that's up to, to be determined. But at least they are going to be able to have some sort of a season. They're just trying to work that out, how it's going to be done.
But they're not allowing some sports because they're out of town. Is that right?
I think that the issue with other sports, this is the sports that they talked about here were what they considered lower risk sports. When you look at what the Department of Public Health came to for a decision. So for example, they looked at cross country and soccer as lower risk sports. The issue that we ran into, and obviously was in the news, is that, for example, sports like football are considered higher risk sports, right? The intent of those is for people to come together. So on those recommendations from public health, those were put off for the fall. I understand based on, there was a fairly large rally at the town, at the Capitol about it. And there is some talk, the governor was talking about the fact that there may look at if there's a way to do it as a spring season. but it's the lower risk sports right now that they're looking at.
What about
Looking at
swimming?
So,
Swimming.
swimming, what was that?
I was gonna say, yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, they did. Okay.
yeah,
last night.
Thank you. So swimming was allowed to.
yeah,
Good.
the girls swimming and the boys and girls cross country are considered the low risk. Just to clarify, Jim, soccer, boys and girls soccer is considered medium risk. So they
Yes.
were okay with that as well. That's consistent with the guidelines that DPH had set. Football was considered a high risk, was not allowed, and now today, actually, CIAC officially decided there would be no football this fall at all. They're not, I think they've given up trying to make it happen. I think will start having discussions about whether they would do it in the spring. But I will tell you that they did mention that the football coach for the Portland Cromwell team is working with both kids from both towns in terms of training. So he does come over here and work with the Portland kids and then goes back and work with the Cromwell kids. So they will continue to work on their conditioning. It's just they're not playing games.
Thank you for the updates, Jim and Ralph. That's very informative. Any other committee reports? Lou?
I don't have a report. I just had a question for Ralph. I know that there was a problem with a splash pad, and I know that they've been working on it. Is it ready to go for next summer?
So we actually have a meeting on Friday with the contractor, and I haven't heard back yet from the engineering from Weston Sampson, but they certainly know that we're looking for an update on it. What was part of it was they were looking at a couple pieces, a couple filters or that were have to be replaced, and they were gonna about now we're supposed to come in, and they were looking at another issue with it. I mean, I don't see any reason why it won't be ready for the spring. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to have it work for this summer, but they're looking at that and trying to resolve it. And I'm hoping that on Friday, whether Weston Sampson shows up or not, they're going to give us an update. We certainly made the point that it's more than time for them to give us an update on where that stands. So the big thing about Friday is meeting with them because we'd like to, the Dorita Construction would like to, the building is entirely completed. It's been completed for a little while now. With the exception, if they have to do any tweaks, we're having to do with the splash pad, but everything else in the building has been completed. And we talked about reevaluating the field situation around this time. So Friday, hope that would be the plan, is to hopefully pass over the building to the town, and perhaps even the fields. That'll be discussed on Friday.
So when we pass over the ownership of the fields and the park, the whole park, and if in fact the splash pad isn't done yet, do you wait until the splash pad is done before you sign off, or do you sign off with a caveat to say